Peyton with Roleplaying Public Radio. This is RPPR episode 75, Plot or Polish. And with me, as always, is Tom Church.
I am, and I was just observing the way your eyes bug out when you start that sentence. It's amazing.
It's just, well...
It's like watching...
Use your imagination,
It's
listeners.
like watching The Miracles of the Human Body, the movie.
Yeah.
I wish you could see what I'm seeing. Just the way Ross's physiology changes when he does that.
Right. Well, moving on, we are... working a lot of things here at RPPR. Just so you know, I've been working a little bit with Railery, which is the video game podcast Let's Play that I have put a little work into. I haven't to lately, but now I've just posted 2 episodes. One, they'll both be linked in the show notes, of a multiplayer game we did of the Warriors, the Xbox One game.
Oh, man.
That was fun because I recorded the game on one thing, and then I had our Zoom H2 just recording us as we were talking, playing the game, and I put them together. So it's not, this is a console game, but you can still hear us talking about it. And it's, a game from 2005 that is about the 1979, cult classic film. So,
by the way, the director's cut, not as good.
Which is mentioned in the Let's Play of Part 2. So, yeah, it's so if you want to get into some Let's Play, here are some of your favorites from RPPR, including Caleb, Aaron, and Tom. So you might want to give that a watch, not just a listen, a watch. So
many bodies falling.
Yes.
So many.
I'm working on the next RPPR Kickstarter. I'm going to try and have that up by the end of this month or the beginning of August. It's going to be called Base Raiders. It's going to be based on material from the Heroes of New Arcadia. And basically, it's going to be a campaign setting for all superhero games. So, the premise is basically superhero dungeon crawling and do-it-yourself DIY transhumanism. So the idea is that all the major players of a superhero world, all the Superman and Doctor Doom types are gone, but they leave all the secret bases and their tech and magic items behind, so normal people can empower themselves. And what do? They go raiding those abandoned bases for profit and also to shut off the various, doomsday machines that they left running. So think, the Fortress of Solitude or the Batcave as dungeon crawls.
You've thought of that before. I know you have.
Well, I have. I don't know about you.
I'm pretty sure that the listeners
So
have
the
too.
whole book, this will actually be a printed book. This won't be a ransom project. This will be an actual book that will have art and pages and paper. Or
you can touch it.
Yeah. This will be about explaining how the world got to be this way, what kind of things you find in superhero fortresses and bases.
Yes, an actual product from Ross Payton.
Yes.
Award-winning published author.
So there'll be a lot of rewards. We're also going to be doing some zombified superhero miniatures because the starting adventure will be a base where clones of superheroes are becoming zombified and attacking people.
Wow, really?
I know.
Zombies.
I went there. So, but you can get your own miniature. Ian Moody will be sculpting a miniature of that. And
genius artist.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all I'm saying.
If you've seen his work on No Security, you know. I'm very excited about it. We'll have more material soon about it. So be saving up your pennies. There will be a lot of options for getting it black and white or a color book. So that's something to look forward to. And there'll also be options that we'll do stretch goals so that the main book itself will be systems free, but I'll put up PDFs on the website of the stats for all the characters in Wild Talents or Means of Mastermind. So
right.
if we meet certain stretch goals, you'll have all the stats.
You're going to touch Mutants and Masterminds?
Yeah, sure. It's a popular system. There's nothing wrong with it. Just because we didn't have the best experience playing it doesn't mean it's a bad system.
So we try it again?
It's our fault. Yeah, we could try it again. I have nothing against it. It's just also, Caleb's Kickstarter, No Security, is finished, and he started uploading that. His first one, Bryson Springs, is available for download as a free PDF. It's got great art, again, from Ian Moody, so you can read it and run it for your own group. I mean, it's very easy to figure out the stats for what to do, in a horror game, to do. This is a systems-free adventure, so... he's hard at work in the next one, The Red Tower, which
another awesome scenario.
We will have the preview APs up pretty soon for those contributors. Caleb just needs to upload them, and that'll be done pretty soon. And Caleb's also been running articles on his blog on Heaven on Games. In fact, he just posted one about gamer logic, player logic, which is pretty. So we say, unique.
Yeah, I would say
because
so.
I actually ran an a Summer Olympics London themed zombie game that I'll be posting when the Olympics start later this month. So Caleb talks a little bit about that in this in the link. So you need to check out Heaven on Games, subscribe to it on your RSS, and because I need to, I totally forgot to, but I will do that today. So. Yeah, that's something to keep in mind.
It's worth a read.
It
definitely.
is. Well, just keep checking up on it. So, anyway, so I think that's about all the news we have for.
All right.
Yeah. So, let's talk about our plot or topic or plot, if you will, plot versus or polish, and
this isn't. It's kind of style over substance, but not the same way we already did an episode on that.
Well, it's not. Well, the Stylish Substance, episode 63, was about the adventure designing. And this is going to be more generalized. This isn't about adventure. This is about gameplay in general and just role-playing games in general.
Yeah,
not specifically one-shots or campaigns or just...
But plot versus polish.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's... plot, polish would be, game, like basically easy to play gameplays.
Well, I would say the smoothness of the game, not necessarily simplicity, but like
I didn't mean simplicity. I meant just how smoothly it plays.
Yeah, it like for example, Palladium is not a very smooth system.
No, it is not.
You can't run a very smooth game in it because there's a lot of issues that come up where there's ambiguity, where the rules are very unclear about things.
I think I actually hear Caleb screaming right now.
Yeah. Wild Talents can get that way when you have very specific superpowers interacting, depending on how they're worded, how they're built. But for example, Monsters and Other Childish Things, it's a very simple game, or it's a less complex game, so there's more smoothness. The gameplay, or 4E Dungeons and Dragons plays when the players understand all the rules, it plays a lot more smoothly.
I remember you said you were in a game where actually everyone knew the rules very well.
Yeah, Dan ran a game that I didn't record where everyone knew the rules. It was a very casual game, but everybody was very much into the dungeon crawling. So here's where this concept came, or where this topic came from. Basically, in the last couple of weeks, I've been playing a lot of indie video games, computer games. There's 3 in particular that I've been playing. Well, 2 games and a mod. The first game is Super Brothers Swords and Sorcery EP, which was Sorcery, yeah, with a W. It was originally for iOS, iPads, and iPhones, but it was ported over to PC for Steam, and we'll have links to it in the shoutouts. And it's very much got a 16/8-bit aesthetic, very pixelated, got a very interesting, unique soundtrack.
I saw gameplay, kind of reminded me of the flashback games.
Yeah, older adventure games. And I love the production design. I love the aesthetic of it, but the gameplay itself was very clunky. Like, all the combat was quick time events that, hit this at this specific juncture, and it was very frustrating when you couldn't time it exactly right. The Trigon fights were very frustrating. And the puzzles got to be like, I'm doing the thing, I know what to do, I just can't do it exactly right. Don't you hate that in puzzle games when
those.
It's like, I know what to do, let me pass, but I'm not getting my timing exactly right. So, very clunky, very frustrating. So, that was a game where the plot was very good, or sort of like, but the gameplay itself was very bad, or I would say very, and also it had one concept that was really intriguing, but the way it's implemented was very bad, in that you have to be in the new moon or in the full moon to get to access certain areas of the game.
But it's not the in-game clock; it's
the real
world.
So you actually have to wait or change your system clock in order to advance in the game. And I love the idea of having to actually look up the phases of the moon, like real world knowledge, in order to progress in a video game, or to master a video game, because that's an amazing concept, because it like makes you think of the outside world and creates this kind of weird sort of feeling that the game is, it's an immersive feeling, actually, I think. So I love that feeling in the game, but the way they implement it was that you are blocked because you did this out of sequence, and you either have to cheat and you actually get an achievement that says you cheated in the game, which I didn't want, or because you can't get 100% completion if you do that. And it's just a very...
And waiting weeks to.
Yeah. So basically, that's what I didn't like about it, and what I did is what I would have liked to see is something like in an RPG where certain phases of the moon change your character, give you penalties or bonuses in certain areas. So it would have been easier if I did this in this phase of the moon, or I could have tried a different way in a certain phase of the moon or something like that. Not something so binary. You have to be in this phase of the moon to progress in the video game. So that was one game. The second game was Lone Survivor, which is I got both of these games from the latest Humble Bundle, by the way. And the Lone Survivor is a side-scrolling post-apocalyptic survival horror RPG / adventure where you play the lone survivor. Everyone else has been killed by this plague, and there's all these weird mutants wandering around with no faces that are called Thin Men, and you have to avoid them or shoot them. Well, you have to get the gun first. And it's very much in the mode of Silent Hill 2. There's a lot of symbolism. There's a lot of vagueness, but it's a lot of creepiness, and it's just an excellent game. But the gameplay itself was clunky, not as bad as Swords and Sorcery, but there's certain times where I had to redo certain sequences just because the controls were so like unresponsive, because you only have like the arrows on your keyboard, not a gamepad or a mouse or anything. So I don't know.
Right. Were the puzzles were they simple enough to understand? Or
it wasn't like in Sword and Sorceries, how the puzzle worked, but if you don't execute it right, like at one point you have to move your mouse over certain areas at a certain timing, like to create, like play waterfalls like a harp, like you move the mouse over it and it's like plucking a string. But if you don't do it exactly right, you have to start over. So that was the thing, but you didn't have that in Lone Survivor. There was a quick time thing where you're being chased by a monster, but
yeah, this is kind of reminded me of a game for the NES of all things, The Uninvited.
Yeah,
it's kind of like it's kind of the point and click, going to rooms that are mostly static and then looking around them.
Yeah,
but there's like one there's one part there's underground passage with a monster in the way, and there's a plate at the ground, and the game gives you no clues. So you have to put a cookie on this plate to get the monster gone, but you can't get the cookie unless you open up this jar, which you first have to open a safe that they don't tell you how to get the code.
It's not nearly that complex. Like, but
it sounds along at least but you know how to do them. It's just a matter of pulling them off.
Well, and I mean that one, it's vague. I mean, I used a walkthrough to help me through it simply because I'm that guy. I use walkthroughs to get through video games because I just feel like I have to beat as many video games as possible in life, and that I do it right if I beat it correctly or whatever, or if I don't use a spoiler, or if I don't use walkthroughs or whatever. But like, I want to keep playing more games. I want to try different games. If I spend too long on one game, I won't get to try all these other games. You know what I mean? So anyway, I
admire your dedication.
So that had a great plot. And it had very kind of clunky gameplay where I loved what was going on in the game. I just didn't like playing it so much in a lot of ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand.
So, and then finally...
Actually, there's a lot of games, I love to watch people play, but I don't want to play.
Right. In fact, that's the next thing, which is DayZ, which is a mod for Arma 2, which is, I think I mentioned on the show, I finally broke down and bought Arma 2, because I was waiting, I just fuck it, I'm going to try it, because, I like zombies, I got to play all the zombie games.
This is madness.
I know. So, Arma 2, in DayZ, you don't even start with a pistol anymore. You literally start unarmed without a melee weapon. If a single zombie shows up, you're basically fucked. Yeah, you might be able to outrun it, but... it's really fucking annoying, and you're still probably going to get killed. And it's the kind of game that is extreme. It's an alpha mod, so they have all these excuses, but it's, very, 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 very difficult, and there's nothing to do. Like, once you get, if you get in the end game, which is getting good weapons and items and shit like that, what the fuck are you going to do other than just shoot other players? And it's interesting in a way because DayZ, the game itself, is really bad. Mm-hmm. Like, the gameplay is really bad. Like, it's cumbersome, it's buggy, it's extremely buggy, it's extremely unbalanced at all. But it's still, I think, so popular because of the meta game. because people are thinking like, okay, one way to cheat in the game, or cheat, quote unquote, is that whenever you play on a server, there's many servers for it. It saves everything about your character, your to a central database. So your items, your health, and your location in the game will be saved regardless of the server. So if you want to kill somebody and you see them, they're over in this position, you could quit your server, join another server that's empty, move over to a position, perfect ambush spot, quit that server, then rejoin the original server, and then ambush the guy. You basically teleport.
Nice.
So that's metagaming, extreme metagaming, like the most blatant metagaming, but that's legal in the game. I mean, that's allowed by the rules of the game. Because they might not have the ability to stop people from doing that. So
right.
It's fascinating for me to see people in like these videos of people going around playing the game. But playing the game, I mean, we'll do a let's play of it on Raillery. I will do that because I bought the game and might as well get some use out of it. But I'm not going to play it for fun because what's the point?
It's not fun.
Well, yeah, it's not fun. So that, in the sense, is the game that, no plot and no polish. Like, it's so complex, so bogged down with bad implementation because it's buggy, and just some of the design decisions, like not giving you a fucking starting weapon. Like, just give me a crowbar so I can kill the one zombie that's chasing me. I don't want to be able to kill all of the zombies. That's fine.
You say you don't need an orbital defense cannon?
No,
or anything?
well, I mean, I understand the balance reason. You want to give newbies too good of a gun because then people will just kill them, hunt them for sport or whatever. So I understand that, but like, you need to give them some way to defend themselves, because otherwise it's completely arbitrary. You show up on the beach with a backpack, a flashlight, and a bandage, but nothing else. You don't even have a crowbar. You can't even punch the zombies.
This is America. Everyone's got a gun.
Not in Chernobyl or wherever the game is supposed to be. It's like Eastern. It's supposed to be like this Eastern European Soviet satellite.
Guns, still.
Yeah, still guns. So
I think aren't there almost more guns than there are people in like America.
Oh well, probably. I wouldn't doubt it. So that's sort of what I've been thinking about. It made me think about game design and gameplay. What is about role playing games that is when you're getting too complex or too high-ended in terms of plot and story and sort of high-end ideas versus core gameplay. I mean, what is the trade-off between those two things? What is the balance? What is it about a game that makes it fun minute by minute? Just the pure gameplay. Like, is it better to have a simple dungeon crawl that is free of relatively, people, beer and pretzel game, people show up, it's a really polished dungeon crawl game, but that's all it's going to be. There's no overarching. The plot is like kill the bad guy, or
get the treasure,
or save the princess is a stretch. So is it better to have a really polished game that doesn't do anything weird or unusual, or is it better to have a game where you're changing the destinies of the world, like in the New World D&D campaign, where I kind of like in the last few sessions, we start with a very simple dungeon crawl kind of game, and by the end we get in this sort of like mythical reshaping the world and the destiny of everyone in the universe, and I kind of have to wing it. There's no rules for it. There's the gameplay is totally unpolished because I'm just making it up as I go along, and it's not mechanically fair or balanced at all. So that's kind of the trade-off I'm thinking. So that's the idea that I want to get across in the discussion I want to have. So Tom.
Well, to me, I don't know if I'm the right person. To me, it's a easy question. To me, plot is way more important than polish. I would much rather play a more free-form style where we really affect things.
Maybe not even free-form, but like bad. Just like the only rules that you can find are just not not Palladium bad, but not great.
I was actually going to use Palladium.
Oh yeah.
There were some times we were playing I played Rifts. I was in high school once after the 80s. It came out. I played Rifts, and most of them were I am Garthak, destroyer of worlds with a boom gun. Yeah. But no, there were some times we had some good GMs. I believe, Ross, you were actually one of them. You used the Palladium system, but you had scenarios that drew us in. And eventually, yes, when combat started, we have to okay, here we go.
Yeah.
But when we were out of combat, just like getting to the plot, dealing with each other, I think it all comes down to group.
Right.
The group you have is really, I think, if you just have guys that show up for 3 hours to do a beer and pretzels game, that's all they want to do.
Yeah. Well, it could be even complex. Like, the thing is, one of the things I want to make is that this is not based on system. This is not a choice of system, because you can have those two different types of games, a very polished or a very plot-heavy game, within the same system. For example, you could do, in D&D 3rd edition, you could have level 1 dungeon crawling, or like level 3 to 5, where characters have a couple of abilities, but not too much, and just have a really polished dungeon that's very fun, like Keep of the Borderlands kind of thing. And on the other hand, you could do epic D&D, where where the rules just like, they tried, but you can tell they gave up after a certain point. The DCs, the numbers, they just don't make fucking sense. And like, we've played epic D&D, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we had the battle,
especially
the Illithid City, that took 2 sessions.
Right, and even then, that was at level 20 something. If you get to we tried that level 40 thing, and that just disintegrated almost entire, like, on contact as soon as we started.
Because the thing I discovered about, like, when you're like level 40 D&D, why the fuck are you adventuring?
Right.
You with like epic level leadership, you can control an empire. Why would you want to busy yourself with that shit?
Well, so that you have the same rule set, but you have characters that have very well defined limitations and abilities, strength and weaknesses, and then you get into the high, and the system kind of, I think, disintegrates after a certain point. It gets kind of like it falls apart. So, what is the balance between that? What works and what doesn't, and what is better? Well, because is it better to like?
Well, using the New World.
Yeah,
it started that way. The game started, as you said, we went on missions which mostly involved delving into things and to try to help the colony survive. Now, that was, heroic tier. By Paragon tier, we still did the delving, but it's more because we did it for our own ends. We wanted to start accumulating our own power.
Right.
It wasn't really until Epic that it got way more esoteric.
See, that's the thing, because like in the New World campaign, I started delving more into this plot thing, and it wasn't necessarily power creep. It was like covering things the system didn't really mean to cover, which was like social change and like political influence and stuff like that. And you have to, the more you get into something that the system doesn't cover, it's basically the ice gets thinner and thinner, and sooner or later you kind of have screw ups, or you have a greater chance of falling through. Like, how do you like a combat? Yeah, you can see who's going to live and who's going to die very, very, fairly.
But a negotiation, which cannot just be settled by a single diplomacy roll.
Right. It's very easy if you come up with these mechanics, like an election or something like that, which we did later on. Like, how do you make that as interesting as and if you do that, like, you spend all your effort coming up with this election mechanic, then, the next thing that's going to come up, you're not going to be able to cover more of this. So do you, as a GM, like, for me, I just kind of kept winging it and the players went along with it. But, like, I always had this feel like I'm not running a good game because it's not fair to the players.
Well, okay, once again, I need to bring back, it's trust.
Yeah.
The thing is, every last player in the group, and I'm speaking for all of them, I know, we trust you. Yeah. As a GM. Like, actually, I think most people that run games we trust.
Yeah.
We trust Aaron when he runs a game.
Yeah.
We trust them to to be fair. We know we don't have favorites in this group.
Yeah.
Everyone does their thing and they do it well. I think really this is a lot less of a problem in groups that have trust.
Right.
It's like, if we have groups that don't, I'm not saying groups that don't trust each other, but groups that haven't developed that yet.
Yeah.
I really think it's really an issue when you have a group like that. That's what I think rules are good for groups that don't know each other too well or haven't played together.
Well, that's kind of that is a good point. But even with groups that trust each other, there can come up issues where it's like, if you don't have, that's why polish is so important, I think, is because it makes things fair and helps increase trust when you realize, okay, this happened to my character and it sucks, he died, he's exiled or whatever, but I know it was because the game played out that way. Well,
to me, I think, what I'm saying, to me, my opinion is you have to have a bit of both. You cannot, I do not believe you can run a game with only just one.
Right.
And it's really just the ratio of what you do it. Because even when you were doing stuff that had no rules, you thought up rules on the spot.
Right, but those aren't going to be as good or...
No, they're not. But they do the job. Is essentially, if it does the job...
But do they? So,
we can argue on that for hours, whether it does the job, because I'm saying, in the times I've gamed with you, it's done the job.
Yeah.
We've done it, and it's not just me. We all looked around the table, everyone thought that was a good decision, a good, fair rule. And we went with it. I don't think we've had a few times when that's happened, and someone claims, "Well, wait, that doesn't make any sense," or "That's not fair."
Right.
And only then do you really need to, okay, well, maybe maybe you had a good idea, but we need to refine it a little bit.
I mean, another thing is it even fair for the GM to run the kind of game where you run into these issues, even before you get, well before you get to that decision where you're like doing an election in D&D where there's no mechanics and you have to make it up on the fly on the spot? Is it fair for a GM to even like put players in that spot where they either have to ad hoc or not even if you spend time developing the rules, you're not going to play test them. They're not going to be as good as the combat rules.
Well, okay.
Hold on.
Okay,
that's fine. Is it fair for a GM to come up with this kind of concept for a game and put his players? They only have the choice of saying yes or no. Like either they agree with the concept and the rules as the GM has either written them up, homebrewed them, house ruled them, whatever, or makes up on the spot, or saying no and ending the game. Like that's, I think, kind of an awkward spot for a GM to put the players in. So when you're a GM, when you design in a game, how much do you just rely on what the game itself does well, and how much do you just like, fuck it, we're just gonna go off in unventured territory and just, who cares if it isn't fair? My story is more important. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I'm getting what you're saying. And once again, most of the time those situations have come up, we agreed to be in them.
Yeah.
In the case of, elections, you mentioned, really, something you just mentioned that, there's an election coming up for something.
Yeah.
We could involve ourselves in it, or we could not. And sometimes, you probably never intended us to, influence it that directly, but for some reason, something breaks through our brains and goes to our pleasure center and realize, no, this sounds like something really fun to do in the game.
Right.
Most of the time, I say my opinion, I can't speak for all, but my opinion, most of the time, if you're in that situation, the group has, to some extent, agreed to be there with you. I have yet to encounter, especially with you, a situation where we got into an awkward situation where there were no rules, and it came out of nowhere, and we didn't expect it.
Right.
I think every situation like that, we have had some inkling that something like this was coming up.
Right.
And to an extent, I believe, yes, it comes down to, it's a collaboration between the GM and the players, but most of the situations that I have observed, there's been some agreement already that both the GM and the players thought this would be fun to go to.
Okay.
So I really kind of think, I don't even think it's really an issue to be fair, because most stuff in games, there has been some mutual agreement, however little.
Right. I mean, it's
I don't think a player could ever just go, well, where the hell did that come from? Where did an election come from? You never mentioned anything about an election.
Right. That's definitely an issue. You don't want to pull the rug out from under them and say, you really thought the game is going to be about this, but we're really playing Made the RPG, or you're really going to be doing, you don't want to do a bait and switch. But as a GM, I just feel like, it's not just a story. You're not just telling them. So you have to have a game there that is a storytelling game that no one knows the outcome. It absolutely, certainly. I think that's the core of what makes role-playing unique. It's a story that is created as it is being played.
I can mostly just speak from this group.
Yeah.
I don't think that's ever been an issue with us. Yes, there's other, I'm sure, other groups. I've been in a couple of games where some stuff has just come up, and I've seen that end several ways. I've seen situations like that where the GM just goes, okay, well, let's actually just retcon it back a few hours and just ignore this. I've seen it ignored totally. I've seen really bad stuff drawn up. Actually, there was it was a Rifts game back during the high school days. It's coming up. We were actually
talking about bad rules, and suddenly Rifts keeps coming up. I don't know what that is. What is that? What's up with that, Tom?
I don't know. All I'm going to say is, Palladium, dude, awesome settings, but fix your system, please.
Not gonna happen.
I know, but I'm just saying.
Never gonna happen.
Anyway, it was essentially it was a tribe of the Simivan monster riders.
Yeah.
We were trying to negotiate with like the heir to the tribe to get him to agree with us, but the leader won't. So we're trying to convince a number to overthrow the current leader.
Yeah.
So it's actually our guns are put away, and we're actually trying to do backroom deals. Which, if you've played if you played Palladium, that's not easy to do.
Yeah, there's no social skills. You can't
And
even make it a skill check.
GM actually came up with a system to who was just using the MA, the mental affinity.
Yeah.
To who's more charismatic. I'm like, we're all like, wait a minute, no, this is like a warrior tribe. It doesn't matter who's more charismatic.
Yeah.
No, this should be like a combat thing, or like the GM's like, no, this will work, and it didn't, because these are like tribal leaders. None of them have strong MA. They're warriors.
Right.
And so we had when our elf player was supposed to be the main person that was going to do this, like, they would never trust this outsider. Like, well, she does have the highest MA. Like, finally we're like, screw it, just
yeah. So I mean, that's a failure of the rules right there, and that sort of hurts the game.
It should have actually been. Now, the way I would, once again, you have to. You can't just totally. There has to be some rules,
right?
In any situation, you have to have some mechanic, whether it's a modified version of the system or just something you threw together in your brain at the last minute,
right?
And sometimes it's going to work, and sometimes it's not.
It's just so often a game's story hinges on mechanics that are not well made, not just like in like combat. In pretty much virtually every RPG, combat is the core mechanic. That's
it is,
and it's the most balance out of all. It gets the most effort from the game designers. It has the greatest chance of being balanced. And I'm not saying they're all balanced. I'm just saying like that's where they put the majority of their hours in the game on is the combat engine, how combat works out. Yet there's so many things that are resolved in a game outside of combat that is it fair to the story that combat has all this complexity and all this very interesting mechanics, while diplomacy is
a die roll.
If that, or it's a simple thing. I know there's games that have social combat that have addressed this, but even those, there are other issues. Like one thing that I realized, the next campaign, I will say we have concluded the Heroes in Arcadia campaign. We're not going to spoil it at all. We're not going to mention it.
No, we're not.
So we're just going to leave that in the air, simply because, we're going to do epilogue games. So just because we finished the main campaign, we can't do epilogue. So
it's a comic book hero game. So
yeah, exactly. So, and there's alternate universes.
The ultimate.
The ultimate. Yeah. And it's a ways off from the podcast. Like the podcast episodes are a ways off. So, like what I was thinking, the main part is like after the next game I'm going to run, the next campaign is going to be a shorter campaign, but it's going to be Iron Heroes. It's going to be business themed, like your merchants on the Silk Road trading, giving supplies to armies, trading, equipping an army basically as it goes around and rampages around the world. Mm-hmm. So because that was the thing, like in the Middle Ages, logistics was handled by traveling merchants, peddlers. So that's the thing I'm going to do. And what games cover business? Business is just trade is like this massive, overwhelming influence in all of history of all of time. And this thing that has this,
but it takes a huge backseat.
Yeah, it's never even mentioned the importance of trade or the drama of trade and business. It's just kind of waved
Then again,
away.
we are America. We're not exactly a bartering culture.
Well, I mean, they say the business of the American people is business. Mm-hmm. And it's not just bartering; it's trade. It's just this massive thing that has a huge potential for drama, for conflict, for storytelling, and we ignor it. In games.
Mad Men, There Will Be Blood.
Right. Why don't we?
Wall Street.
And I know there are indie games that can cover that, for Fiasco and other things that can kind of manage it. But why is there no business RPG? These are the kind of things that game mechanics don't really cover very well. But stories of games still revolve around them. So. is it fair to gamers to have a game where only 50% of the conflict is resolved in an interesting game and the rest of it is just kind of like a coin flip?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind of thing I'm thinking about. What's better? Is it better to stick to the strengths of the game engine and use those to fuel your story, or how? I mean, we've talked about our group and what our standards are, and yeah, I think you're right. We have a lot of trust, and everyone. I think the thing is, everybody at our table knows when I'm just like fucking around in terms of game mechanics. Like, I'm just making this shit up.
And also, our first reaction is to help out, to pitch in.
Yeah.
That's kind of that's a group that's been together a long time. That's just how they work.
Yeah. So
and that's what I think makes it even better.
Yeah. But I think, and so yeah, so that's one solution. If everybody has a lot of trust, everybody trusts the GM to come up with game mechanics that they all agree upon, and I think that they're aware that there are these improvised, that I'm just having to make up new game mechanics out of thin air, is fair. But like, I tend to go for game stories that I know they're going to go that way. I'm going to in New World campaign, well, you're going to be talking to forces of mythology, Thunderbird and all this other shit, and we're just going to get fucking cosmic up in this bitch. It's not even like we stopped doing standard combats in there. Of course, that was mainly because combat had hit point inflation in Epic tier,
and it eventually just became a slog.
Right. So, I mean,
I know. You actually kind of modified the hit points versus the damage the creatures did, right? Yeah,
I think. I know for Dark Sun, I have solo hit points and gave them more damage. So, I mean, yeah, there's like, just because I say it's what they get the most hours in and get design doesn't mean that it's perfectly balanced. It just means that's the best chance of being balanced or being fun. I mean, it's like, why do we? I mean, getting more philosophical. Why do we have a game telling us the story? Because for me, because it adds uncertainty. It means that the story isn't predetermined by a single storyteller. It means that, or any storyteller, it's by this element of chance that we get more organic stories that have greater drama.
I got you.
We know that the hero's going to defeat the villain in the end, but does that mean he's going to save the princess or not? Or we know that's the standard, but in a game we don't know if he will or not. And then if he does, is he going to save the princess? Is he going to die himself? Is his friend going to die? Is he going to lose this special magic item that makes him a hero?
What's he going to do after he gets the princess?
Right. So there's this element of this chant that I think is what makes gaming stand out. So how important is the game part as opposed to the role playing part? That's kind of what I've been thinking about. So,
and it seems to me, I'm this is even an opinion. This is just what I've observed.
Yeah,
it seems to be the simpler the game, the less polish you need, and that goes by leveling. I'm talking about
what do you mean by simple? Like, do you mean like games like Rhesus or Wushu? Where
no, I'm more talking about I guess the power level of the game is more what I'm thinking. Because it does seem that when like level 1 D&D, even if you're planning to take it to this amazing place like the New World, we still started doing very basic stuff where the system was was well established, and perfect, well balanced, and just the stronger we got, the more we seemed to stretch the rules out. By the end, then you get to Paragon tier. Now the rules are stretched even further, but still mostly holding.
Yeah.
But by the time we get to Epic, the stretching has gotten so much it's starting to tear. Yeah. Now holes are appearing, and the holes have to be patched by often improvised stuff.
Right. And I think it's the tearing isn't from the combat, because Epic combat.
I'm not talking about combat either.
Yeah, combat was still balanced in there. I mean, yeah, it wasn't perfect, but it was still basically there. It wasn't like we suddenly could just incinerate all our foes because we started facing epic foes. So that was still balanced. But you're right. Outside of combat, epic characters play very differently than Paragon or heroic tier characters. Like a heroic tier character in a social encounter would be like convincing a single guy to do a thing. Paragon tier, that's ridiculously easy. Like that's no longer a challenge.
Now you're trying to convince large groups of people,
or very important people that are very hard to convince. Somebody like a king or a trader. But like at Epic,
we're talking to demigods,
right? So like, what do you remember anything from the New World specifically about that? Like.
I love dealing with getting the two elementals to marry, so we can do that.
Yeah.
Or trying to talk Ant down.
Yeah.
Just it's stuff like that, and you realize now this is not like convincing the butcher to give you a bargain on meat you're buying. We're talking with primal forces of this world, and you don't talk to them the same way.
Yeah.
And I'll say, in this case, talking to a single guy, do we even need to role play this? Like, right. I could come here, I'm gonna take all your profits for the rest of your life. What do you think of that? Yeah. And he would have no choice but to, yes, sir. Here's my meager profits.
Right. Yeah, I roll so well. So there's this huge potential for exploiting or metagaming, thinking outside. Like, oh, I can do this now, so I'll just do that. And work up a huge advantage.
But yeah, the rules need to change with the higher power level of the game.
Right.
When the power level gets up to 9,000.
Well, it's not even I think it's not even necessarily low to high power. It's like from starting point to end point. Like there's the difference between your beginning and the end of the journey, if that makes sense, the end game, and how much your character changes outside of that is very important. In some games your character hardly changes at all, or it basically stays the same. And I know we talked about dynamic versus static characters and that kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, if you your rule set can only accommodate so much. So yeah, it just comes down to that question, how much of the game do you base in areas that the rules can't handle? How much are you going to just focus on polished gameplay?
There is no straight answer to this. It depends on your own personal opinions.
I think there are some objective guidelines. I think there are some things you should not. There are some game system. There are some hard rules. I think having the rules try to simulate everything. Or try to solve I think one problem is trying to create a rule set that can solve all the problems.
Right.
So, and by that I mean again the DayZ thing where you have it's so your character can get cold, so he needs to stay warm. He has to have food and water. He has to get blood from a blood bag to heal himself. It's very, very realistic, quote unquote. But if you simulate things too much, then it's just not fun. It stops being you can only put so many rules in a game.
Yeah, I got you.
So I think that's the first thing. You have to accept that there are going to be weak spots in your game.
I think rules should be like the amount of laws for a good democracy. It's more than anarchy, less than fascism.
Which is a very, very varying thing depending on who you're asking. So there's that. I think another thing to keep in mind. So again, the DayZ approach is wrong. Just having super complex rules, Phoenix Command of kind of thing is just too much.
And no rules at all is not the way to go either.
Well, then it's not a role playing game. I mean, it has to have some rules to be a role playing game.
Otherwise, it's just pretend.
Well, yeah, exactly. And
I have a super laser. Well, I have a super laser shield. No,
yeah, you're just playing Calvin Ball at that point, which is fine, but whatever. So yeah, you have to have some rules, but you have to accept that your rules will have weaknesses, and then you have to think about how well you can handle the weak spots. How well can you handle those points in the game where you're not going to have the polish? Or you're not going to have the smoothness. And for us, I know one of the reasons why I do go into all these weird areas, in the Haster game, Carcosa games, and the New World campaign, and some of the others, is because I know the group will go with me to these weird fucking places, places that are outside the norm. So that's very important to know where your group will go with you. So if you want to do a game you're going to be Beijing Peking opera singers, there's going to be an opera, Peking opera, that's the game. If your group will go with you, all right, well they'll go with you. But if they don't, doesn't matter how polished the game is.
Yeah.
So
It comes down to that group again.
yeah. Well, if you're trying to do peaking opera, like in D&D, and so everyone's like basically a bard, with singing and dancing and shit like that. And you don't even have fights in it. It's just singing and dancing the entire time, which is like interesting, but like how many people are going to want that? Or better yet, like 4th ed D&D, everyone's a bard, and you're really you're just reskinning everything, so you're Jim, and you're just going through a battle of the bands with other 1980s cartoon.
Fuck you, Ross. And I hate you now.
There's no fighting. There's very little fighting.
So we're just truly outrageous.
It's just skill challenges and being truly outrageous and describing dance moves. I actually had an idea. Like after the Base Raiders RPG Kickstarter, I think I'll do a Haster Carcosa one. But after that, I think I want to do a dance-off RPG Kickstarter. Like, where it's like Step Off or something like that, where you just resolve everything through dancing.
Like you got served?
Yeah, you got served. You get served as instead of fighting. Like, there's no fighting mechanics. It's literally dancing for everything.
That you can use in any system, in any scenario.
It'd be a whole RPG. Like, it'd just be a whole game. Just dance off the RPG. So
it's like a musical, except dancing.
You getting served. So... that's so. In that case, the dancing mechanics in that better be fucking polished.
Yeah,
but you're not going to do the Civil War unless it's a really fucking weird Civil War, instead of cannons. Yeah, you have boomboxes. So I'm just going off on a tangent at this point. So I think
Pickett's charge would have been very different.
So so the first 2 rules, I think, don't realize you can't simulate everything. You can't have rules for everything. You can't have great rules for everything. 2, you have to know how far your group will go with you in terms of the weird spots, the weak spots of a game. I think the thing is to always try to have a balance. Even if you're going to do some experimental stuff, always put at least some polished stuff in there so everybody has fun. Because if it's just you're going in the weird spots, you're going in the areas of the rules that don't make sense, or that you're having to improvise, then it gets too loosey-goosey, and you might as well be playing Calvin Ball. Because even in the New World campaign, it was mostly pretty standard stuff. So, there were a couple of times, at the end, I felt kind of bad at the end because I wasn't like it was nothing but the weird stuff that I was making up as I was going along.
But that was also the finale, so
yeah,
I think it fit.
And by making I was going along, remember I had the story figured out. I know what was going to happen, but I couldn't figure out the mechanics quite exactly. So, and even if I did, it wouldn't have been play tested, so it really wouldn't have mattered if I did or not. So it's. Because I do pretty good at that. I mean, Tom, what about you? Do you ever do like going outside the rules? Or
I often do. If it makes sense, I'll often do it. I mean, sometimes, especially it's a lot of the games I do. I like to do a lot of interaction, and I do kind of hate. I often hate the like diplomacy roles being solved by a die roll.
Yeah,
I often want something more.
Right.
If it's just like negotiating to get a better hotel room, that's fine. A die roll can do that. But when it's like interrogations, I especially don't want to just leave to a die roll. I like to actually do those out. Mm-hmm. And yes, my players aren't professional interrogators.
Right.
So, but I can't just have it. Well, you're just gonna have to think of something that I think is suitable for this guy to start talking. But I'll come up with stuff using skills they wouldn't even think of doing. I'll encourage them to use their other skills to help out, like psychology or some guy leaving to go look up this guy's past.
Right.
It's stuff that's not covered in a lot of games, but right. I like to do kind of stuff like that that's still in the rules, but it's using rules never intended for that.
Well, and the interrogation is actually a really good example because, you're saying you're ignoring the system as is, which is
essentially
a skill check.
An interrogation role.
Okay, so you're ignoring the system, so you're going off the beaten path, and what you described your approach, which is basically they tell you what they're going to do, and then you decide if it works or not, right?
Well, yeah. Or I try to use as many skills as possible.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. How far, like, is it... Do you come up with any sort of rules or internal guidelines for yourself?
Essentially, what I like to do with interrogations, I actually have, like I'll put tick marks for the number, like for the bonuses or slashes for a penalty. Like, say someone decides, okay, I'm going to use just like an empathy check. I'm using this. It uses the cyberpunk skill, so it's basically emotional perception.
Right.
If someone like rolls right off the bat and fails that roll, I'll put a minus. Okay, you're now at a current penalty with this guy because you totally misread his face.
Okay.
I'll keep that going as long as they want it to go, but also this guy gets to do stuff to them too.
Okay.
Like he gets to use his own skills, or he gets to watch them and see if it, like, say someone tries to use intimidate, but I'll actually ask them, are you actually prepared to do that to this guy? Because a lot of them, they have character types say that would be totally against what you play this character on. So if a guy says, "I threaten to smash his knees with a hammer," if the guy rolls and says knows he's never going to smash my knees with a hammer, he'll actually have a bonus on him to resist any further things, and it keeps going until finally, it finally does come down to into an interrogation roll.
It does, okay.
But I then factor all that stuff that happened over the course of it into it.
Okay.
So essentially, it's not just a static roll. It's no, you have to work at this.
Okay. That's only going actually slightly outside the rules, because the rules, pretty much every system allow you to stack up modifiers. So, like, do you put any hard limits, like how long they can keep trying, or can they just like, I'm going to go from A through Z on all of my skills? How does zoology affect him? Is he afraid of?
No, I have limits.
Okay. Is it because just a reasonable thing that you just kind of?
No, I'll let them do it, but I actually have in my mind.
But
it's the ridiculousness of it.
Okay.
If someone tries to use zoology, like, say, have you ever heard of the Centroxia 5 fighting fish?
Yeah.
It's like very rare fish, has this chemical in it, and he's like, so are you going to use this on me? You're like, what the fuck is this? So I'll actually make the modifiers for the guy to resist even higher, because you're just pulling shit out of your ass right now, aren't you?
All right.
I had an interrogation go where someone tried to use tried to throw the kitchen sink of skills at this guy.
Okay.
And by the time he was done, this guy he had like a plus 17 to resist being interrogated. At the end of it, the guy rolls and he rolled like a 9, so he rolled very well on a 10 to do this, and the guy's like, "You're pulling all this shit out of your ass, aren't you?"
Ouch.
And it's
so basically, they can keep trying until they decide. The players can keep trying things until they decide.
It's me playing the guy they're interrogating.
So it's not like in, like, for example, LA Noire, you only have so many questions you can ask a guy. No, and then you have to either charge him or suspect.
I've seen, it's movies, but I've seen a lot of interrogation scenes.
Yeah.
And I know they can go on for hours and hours.
Okay. So it's up to the player. So you just give them as much time. So that's turns into a mini game.
Because it involves one of my favorite things in games is interaction with players and NPCs.
Okay.
It's what the group I mainly
Your
play
bread and butter,
loves.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of that, but eventually, the more you do it pointlessly, the more this guy's going to realize you're not taking this seriously.
Okay. So you're sticking actually pretty close to the system.
I normally do. I don't think I've really ever truly just gone way out there and just...
So, like, I mean, for example, like, if you want, like... I'm thinking just off the top of my head, if I were doing an interrogation scene, like, you could use that mechanic, and I'd probably do something like that myself, because that's easy, it's close to the system, so why do that? But you could do a thing where it's like a keyword thing. It's like a puzzle. You can find the three things, the guy's 3 weak spots, he'll then turn on you. So if you can figure out that his girlfriend's pregnant, and that his parents are ashamed of him, and that he hates his job, and then you realize, because of those 3 things, he wants to get a lot of money to marry his girlfriend and leave his job. So if you offer him a better job, then he'll instantly flip. For example, so no skill, no die roll required. So that's going outside of the thing, but that turns it into a puzzle where you have to find the 3 pieces.
In this game, there's really only one thing I haven't had to do yet, but I am working on it.
Yeah,
because it's a sci-fi space opera with a lot of horror, with like cosmic horror elements.
Right.
Yeah, essentially, the plot is there's actually like a breach in the wall of hyperspace which
Yeah.
actually leads to like hell or
Right.
the void.
Oh, it's Event Horizon.
Kind of.
It's Event
Except like ships traveling through hyperspace, they can't experience it. But if there's a recently dead corpse, then a spirit from the void can actually possess it and gain access to the real world.
Ah, you're Warhammer 40K then.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But it's meeting up with like the spirits like that I mean there isn't. I'm using the cyberpunk system. There really isn't a sanity system for it.
Oh, so you're making up your own system.
I'm trying to make up my own sanity system.
Okay.
For it.
So how much of that are you going to inflict on the players without just writing? How much of that are you going to have in your head, or how much of that are you actually going to write out? Are you going to give them rules and like play test it with them? And
I haven't decided because I've come up with like several different rule sets, but I really can't think of a way.
Okay.
Because there isn't really a will. I mean, there's a cool stat.
Yeah.
Which is essentially your willpower, but I don't care how cool you are, you're eventually gonna, if you're confronted with this kind of shit.
Okay.
That
so you've got the option of like making a new stat, which totally reworks character generation, or you have to do something else. So yeah, so you're going outside the beaten path. So you're still figuring it out. You haven't
because they haven't got there yet.
All right.
I mean, they've encountered several of the corpses that have risen.
Yeah.
And and they fought them off. They can wipe them out, and yes, and the spirits just go right back to the void afterwards. But they haven't yet got one that's been possessed a long time.
Right.
One that's firmly entrenched, because they really tend to start altering the bodies they're in into something that would be given a san roll. So they haven't encountered that yet, but it's coming.
Okay. So you have to give us an update to see how the rules, how the players respond to the new whatever sanity. You're definitely going to give them a sanity system.
Yes, I am definitely going to give them one. I'm actually thinking not so much a sanity as an insanity system. Essentially, I'm not going to like
potato.
Well, I'm not going to take sanity points away.
Okay.
I'm going to start adding
I see.
like kind of like I guess mental stress would be something like a mental stress point.
I think the Dark Heresy system has something like that. The Warhammer 40K RPGs have something like that. So that sounds. Anyway, so you're trying to figure your way out. Have you had things like that in the past?
Not
or
really.
Or gone that far out? Yeah.
Not really. I mean, it's more stuff like what I've been doing for the interrogation stuff. Little rule things like that.
I mean, that is a modifier. I mean, that is definitely going outside the rules as written, because normally it would just be make your skill check. That's it. But you're letting it play out. You're expanding it, giving players more room. Because I think if you when you initially said you took away the die roll, then it's not even a game anymore. It's whether you guess what you're thinking, basically.
No. I actually think personally for stuff like that, it still needs to come down to a die roll.
So even for example, if the guy who fucked up his interrogation, and the guy has plus 17 against him, the subject, but the interrogator still rolls
a crit.
A crit.
If he rolls a crit, then essentially you just get one of those brain waves that something just clicks in your head and you realize what this guy is really about.
Yeah, and then
it's very rare, but it happens.
Yeah. So all right. So so you still want that element of chaos.
I do kind of have a rule on that if they fuck up to the point where it's like a plus 20.
Yeah.
That guy's basically got a crit immune resistance to you. He knows your shit.
Okay.
And you could roll a crit and he's like, no, you're not.
All right.
Fuck off.
So there is that you can permanently fuck.
Yeah.
Up.
Actually, to me, crits don't automatically guarantee success all the time.
Okay. Fair enough. So again, I get more of the story heavy,
Well, actually, I meant I'm doing a system thing here that I love. The thing about that system, rolling a crit is rolling a 10. It doesn't mean you automatically succeed. It means you get to roll another 10 and add that to your roll. So you could actually roll a 10 and then make another roll and roll a 1, and essentially you have 11 plus your stat. That still may not be enough.
Right. What if you roll another 10?
You keep going. It explodes.
So it explodes. All right. So, if that guy rolls a 50 on his check, though, even on the guy who had autoimmune, are you still going to do that if he got some insanely good roll?
In that case, if he like double or triple explodes, I'm like, okay, some things are just meant to be.
All right.
If you do that, okay, look, you are meant to break this guy. The gods have decreed that this guy is broken before you, and even he admits, you're right, I'm sorry. I will tell you everything. I'll write it down for you. Here, nice. I'll notarize it.
Yeah.
Can I get you some coffee?
All right. So the element of chaos is still important in the game. Or chance.
Randomness.
Yeah. Chance.
Randomness. It's really there has to be randomness to everything.
Okay. Well, I think this is sort of a good stopping point for now, because this, like I said, this discussion is
it could go on forever.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just something to think about when you're running a game is how much is it polished gameplay and how much of it is just going out beyond the beaten path, and how fair is it to inflict unproven rules on fun, and
I'll say, it's okay to mess up.
Yeah,
it's okay to do something that doesn't work, and the players all agree on that.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean the game's tanked, but you're not always going to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to try something very experimental, you need to think about it. Like, if you wanted to do, a dance-off game using D&D, or AD&D first edition AD&D, you might want to
plan that shit out.
Yeah, exactly. Or Phoenix Command.
But also, no one's telling you can't try it.
Right. So, just when you're running your own games, you're playing. Think about the effect polish has on your game versus the plot, and whether when your plot goes to weird places that the rules don't cover, how to make that fair for your players or for your GM. And it's a very complex topic, but I think we'll talk about it more. I think I want to get more into these game design kind of things rather than, we've been talking about systems and Kickstarter lately, but we should just focus on core stuff.
There you go.
I don't know. Well, of course, I may be wrong. We leave it up to you, the listeners out there. What do you want us to talk about? So, because we can talk about stuff all day long.
We can, seriously. It's like
it's a thing.
It's a thing with us.
Listen to the Railery thing. We talk about video games. So
did I talk about Marcus Aurelius?
Yes. All right. Next up, Tom has not quite a letter.
It's not a letter, but it's more a return to something I haven't done in a long time.
Right. And
I've mentioned this on another episode.
Right. And after that, we will have shout-outs and a letter from a reader or listener.
Which we always love to get.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, this thing that I am now doing that I haven't done in a long time is I'm doing a play-by-post game. Now, I know I mentioned the last game I did this, which I believe was like 1999, was based on SWAT Cats. I think I mentioned this in one of the very earlier episodes. And it was essentially just people trying to go, look how badass I am. I'm going to do whatever I want regardless of the cops or the rules of nature or God or whatever. And I quit after a week. So, and I've just avoided that. There's been some play-by-post games on the forums that I haven't really gotten into. But finally now, just a couple of weeks ago, I got involved into another play-by-post game that has actually been extremely fun. And and with a caliber of role players it's amazing for something I've experienced in a play-by-post game before. So, anyway, the game is based off the Spirit of Redemption Mass Effect fanfic story. I know I've given a couple of shout-outs to already. Set in that universe, but but off the beaten path, so not messing with the main story. But just the caliber of the role players in that is just amazing. People that actually think out their characters, do stuff, and what was more shocking to me was work as a team. Their posts are all stuff like, I'm going to do this so I can make it easier for my other team members to do this, and to me that I was blown away because I'd never seen a play-by-post game where that happens. It's very unique. So what I did was I got four of the players in the game to answer a couple of questions as their character, just to get an idea of the fact that they actually have characters. And these responses that I'm about to read are actually them responding within seconds of my questions. So them not even thinking, oh wait, I have a character. What's this supposed to sound like? This. So I'm just going to read a couple of these as my letter. So the first question was, would you state your names for the record? And the first player, his character Siege, which is a Geth from the game of the machines, his was, we are mobile platform CROWD 245 designated Siege. We are optimized for close range combat utilizing the deployment of specialized weapons of both hand-to-hand and heavy classifications. The other one, Nameless, is actually Arachni, one of the insect things who communicate via kind of songs, mental songs. But I have not yet received my name song, but these singers call me Nameless. I am told I will have my name song soon, which makes me sing joy songs. I am a brood warrior of the singing planet of those whom you call Arachni. There's Samael, who is a sorry soldier, just says, infiltration and close assault specialist. All I said. And then there was Des, who is a Turian, says, I'm Desiderius Lucius, BSEC detective and ex-Special Forces operative. The first actual question was, and to what do you attribute your coolness? Siege said, no data available. Nameless said, I do not understand coolness songs. What are they, please, and how should I sing them? Des said, decades of experience, big guns, and dashing good looks. Looking cool isn't the goal, but it's a nice side effect. And Samael said, I perform my mission to the best of my abilities. Children worry about whether or not they look cool while doing so. I'm not a child. Then I was asked, what is the greatest moment of your career, kind of, i.e., the game? Des said, is that thing on? I'm not talking about this if that Futari camera is recording. By the way, she came up with an entire language and swearing words for different aliens. Very good stuff. Siege said, we postulate that better information may be collated if we provide answers for the other runtimes. Des said, I'm in more of a support role in the team. I just keep people alive so they can have great moments. But if I had to choose, fighting off a boarding party naked was probably it. And Samuel goes back in. I recently was involved in an assassination and exfiltration operation with a member of my squad and 2 mercenary leaders. It went better than we anticipated. And then Siege comes back on. We determined that the assistance in achieving ballistic flight provided by Nameless Brood Warrior was a tactically efficient maneuver. So I came in. So the bug threw you, but affirmative. And then the last question was, you're at the Bellagio Hotel in Las Vegas. 12 members of a human Luddite religious group have taken 50 hostages in the main casino. They have a bomb threatening to blow the whole place. Do you take them seriously? And if you do, what do you do? Siege wrote, situational parameters of this scenario are outside of our platform's capabilities to safely neutralize. We would defer to platforms specialized in negotiation and or support functions. Nameless, the Arachnai said, yes, I would hear if their songs had intention in them, darkness. Then I would take the position of the explosive machine, with its fire and metal from their minds, and sing myself to its location. I would take it and sing myself elsewhere, someplace where it would sing its songs of destruction without harm to others. Des, the Turian, wrote, I'm torn between saying call for backup, surround the building and attempt to negotiate with them, or take a team, toss flashbangs into the room, and neutralize them quickly before getting an explosive specialist to defuse the bomb. And Samuel the Asari said, I know from the feel of their minds if they were serious. We'd use a negotiator and a forward response team to keep the situation under control, while infiltration units moved in via stealth to deal with the terrorists and their bomb. And let's just say the last Play Outpost game I was in, that many words would be impossible to get out of any of these players. And a lot of them were like in their 30s in this game. Adults, and they were just like, shoot gun, kill things. This is actually a group that would take the time to come up with responses like this, and it is amazing. And I'm glad to be part of it. By the way, I know you're right here, Ross. Just what do you think? What kind of character do you think I'm playing? Knowing me, what do you think?
An alien?
Yes.
An alien guy who speaks in a German accent?
Yeah, no.
Teutonic?
No. Nothing German.
Russian?
Wow, Ross, you're really reaching.
Really?
No, I'm actually playing a Solarian computer hacker nerd.
Okay.
I'm actually playing someone terrified by combat.
You're role-playing Aaron?
Yeah, in a sense. I'm kind of role-playing a lot of Aaron's characters, except that they're me. And like when I got in my first firefight, my reaction was, the first sound of gunfire, to run screaming the opposite direction and collide with the wall and knock myself out.
Okay. All right. Well,
I'll put up a link to it. The posts are just really fun to read, really good role-playing. And as this is a podcast about role-playing, I felt that needed to be shared. Well,
play-by-posts are a emerging and important subset of role-playing games, and it's certainly far be it from us to neglect them. So,
it's all the players are on their A game on this.
Okay.
It's very, very amusing, and I'm going to stick with this for a long time.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Well, we'll be right back with shout-outs. Back. So, first off, we're going to talk about some shout-outs before we get to the listener letter. So, Tommy, you had a couple. First, why don't you mention one of them?
All right. Well, since we're going with, we talked a lot about games. I have a Steam game I'm really into right now.
Yeah.
And that's Breath of Death.
Yeah.
Same people that did Cthulhu Saves the World.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's like an RPG like that, except it's in a world where everyone's undead.
I think the guy who does it. His company's called Z-Boyd Games. Mm-hmm. I think it's just a one-man shop, or maybe one or two people. But yeah, they do it
largely like stuff,
Super Nintendo,
kind of like using a RPG Maker type.
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, it's
it's very well written,
like Final Fantasy II,
but very well written, very well done.
Yeah, very fun. Yeah, I mentioned Cthulhu Saves the World. I've beaten that myself. And I know they just did the new Penny Arcade, Precipice of Darkness.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is definitely one of them. So that's a fun game. I want to mention the 3 games that we brought up in the show. which would be Swords and Sorcery. Super Brothers Sword and Sorcery EP. Again, it's probably better on the iOS than it is for Steam, but you know, if you the music's certainly good, and it's worth playing just for the aesthetic, I think. Of course, out of the 3 games, the best one would be Lone Survivor. That game is just straight up good. Like, the gameplay is a little clunky, but it's worth it for the story. And it's just really very horrific and very, very close to Silent Hill 2 in terms of its story and setting. And yeah, it's just great. So, nice. And it's cheap. It's like $10 on Steam. So
can't beat cheap.
Yeah, and it's not a very long game either. It's like 4 to 8 hours, depending on for your first playthrough, depending on how fast you are, how quickly you go through it. And then of course Daisy, which is an Arma 2 mod.
Bicycle.
Yeah, it's the reason why Arma 2 was released in 2010, but for the last month, it's been the #1 best-selling game on Steam because of Daisy. So they're working on Arma 3 right now. Arma 2, by the way, is a hyper-realistic military sim, like first-person shooter or helicopter or tank. You know, you can do it all. And apparently it's a really fun game. I've actually wanted to play it before that because of its complexity and everything like that. There are videos of it where like they simulate a battle between 1,000 guys, and there's like tanks and planes, and it's like you're in a fucking war. Like, wow, it's really cool. So, yeah, Daisy. So, but the game Daisy itself, yeah, try it, but oh my, like, you need to be prepared for some bullshit, like just straight up bullshit. Like, not even counting the players who are gonna like just shoot you. Like, you literally cannot, like, Caleb described it as The Road, the video game. So like, yeah.
God, that was bad.
Yeah. So you had another thing you wanted to mention. The CCG you've been playing a lot.
Oh yeah, it's actually it's
a classic.
I literally
it's an oldie.
I literally thought so little of this before that I actually suddenly forgot what it was. But CCG, it was out in the late 90s. Aliens versus Predator, the CCG. Now it's out of print now, but it's one of those games that I bought boxes of boosters on because there's stuff I wanted.
Right.
And
I'm sure you can get it cheap on eBay.
Oh yeah, they're dirt cheap right now. But I work with kids right now. I'll leave it at that. And I'm actually introducing this game to where I work, and it's I'm essentially rediscovering it myself because I hadn't played it in over a decade. But it's one of those like, oh yeah, this was kind of fun back in the day, and it's because there's kids are into Magic right now. They really love that game. So like, hey, here's one with guns and aliens and stuff. We're like, oh yeah, that's cool too. So yeah, I feel I've done my part to help out people.
Yeah, that's a way of describing that. One shout out I want to give is RPPR regular Thad. Has been in a web series, kind of in a web series that is being produced here at Missouri State University. I know some people who worked on it. The web series itself is called Epilogue. It's a sci-fi time travel piece. It's set in, like, the main story is set in the modern day where a plague has wiped out most of the people. And the idea is sometimes that, hey, we can go back in time to the source. We figure out where the plague started in the Middle Ages, so we can go back in time and fix it there. And
nothing bad could happen.
What could possibly go wrong? So, I'll put a link to the main web series, but the main thing is that was put on as for these side videos of a pizza delivery or pizza salesman, runs this pizza store, and he like makes these ads as the plague gets worse and worse of like, hey, our pizza's great, come get our pizza here, it's so great.
Our guys are not afraid to walk into certain death.
Yeah, exactly. So Godel's Deliveries is what it's called, the ad. So I'll put a link up to the most recent one. Or to some of us, you can get a sense of it. So if you want to see Thad, you can see him on this video or these videos. So
he loves to be filmed.
Yes, he does. But he's the one volunteering for the acting. So let's try and get more views for Godel's Deliveries than Epilogue, or go see Epilogue too. So.
We will change the world.
Exactly. And another YouTube video. This is Dad Tux. It's a D&D Like, you remember the D&D cartoon?
Yeah, I totally do.
Some people took an episode of it and basically revoiced it so that everyone was a player in the game. So like, oh, I'll use my cloak of invisibility, and then you see the girl put on her cloak of invisibility.
Roll a 14. Like, okay, well, but your shoes are still visible.
Yeah, exactly. So it's one episode of the D&D cartoon as if it were a real RPG scenario. So it's pretty amusing. It's worth the 13 minutes. So that's the thing.
That show was really awful.
Whoa, huge hate out of nowhere. Gee, whoa.
Yeah, the D&D cartoon was awful.
Oh my God, Tom. What?
I said it.
Whoa. And this is coming from someone who used to play a SWAT Cats play-by-post game.
I never said I was I was holier than it.
Well, I'm just saying, SWAT Cats is a worse cartoon than D&D.
You take that back right now.
I'm sorry,
Ross.
it is.
No, Ross, you die. I will kill you.
I haven't even watched SWAT Cats, but I have watched the D&D cartoon. Therefore, D&D cartoon is better. So
I believe your logic is flawed and non-existent.
I think your face is flawed. Your brain is flawed.
Just think, listeners, we're gonna have 7.5 hours of this on the way to Gen Con this year.
Yeah, this is gonna be fun. Anyways, the last two shout outs are two webcomics I found that are pretty great. One is called Nimona, and it's basically about a sidekick for a supervillain. She just shows up. It's like, hey, boss, I want to work for you. It's like, no, I don't want any sidekicks, but I'm a shapeshifter. Like, okay. All right, you can work for it. And it's set it's not in the real world, but like in this weird alternate D&D or fantasy world where like there are knights and wizards, but they also have TVs and like and explosives and things like that. So
lovely.
Yeah, it's just started. It's only got like 16, 17 pages so far, so it's easy to catch up, and it's worth reading, and it's got great art. So
good art's good.
Deal with that.
I'm dealt with.
Finally, Alpha Flag, which is another webcomic that is really fucking weird. It's like a guy wakes up in this Arctic station by himself, and he doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know why he's there, and he starts getting into this Twin Peaks-esque mystery where everything is based on flags. And like by flags, I mean the kind of flags you use for semaphore. Mm-hmm. So like every character in this webcomic is based on a semaphore flag. And like there are puzzles based on semaphore flags.
Wow.
And you actually win prizes in real life if you figure out the puzzles in this. So it's like really fucking weird and really good. And I can't wait to see what happens. So
wow.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like
and prizes.
Yeah, it's just like holy crap. This guy's putting in a lot of work, a lot of polish into these puzzles. So those are the shout outs for this particular episode. We did watch Atlas Shrugged, but that we're not giving that a shout out. I did, when Caleb did, and some other people did, but not Tom because he's working that night. But Ragnar the Pirate is all I want to say about that. So anyway, and it was such a bad movie, so much mahogany. So let's get to the letter.
Okay.
Yeah. So, hey, just got into your show. Warning, possibly long message, possibly. So, this is from Chris. I'll leave out his last name for respect. And as someone new to the world of pen and paper RPGs, your podcasts are very informative. I've been backtracking the old episodes of work. I stumbled on your site looking for recorded games of Eclipses because I plan on running a campaign. I really enjoy actual plays because it's useful to hear the rules being used while reading them. I'm looking for advice on what to do with a player, so let's see if we can help him. Last year, I ran my first game and mistakenly chose a game that had a horrible combat system, so I had to work around it. I ran Scion, which is the modern demigod game. And everything other than combat was running good. My story was progressing. Players were having fun. I challenged them. I gave them a reason to hate the villains other than, he is just the bad guy. Two players had a restaurant which was attacked many times and destroyed. Dick. Yeah, I hate it when my restaurant...
Yeah.
I'm a demigod and my restaurant is destroyed. That
pisses you off.
That does. I got tired of running it for many reasons. One player was making a lot of bad choices in life, like not getting a job or having money to pay his rent, etc., etc. Another reason was one player, Nick, when I made his character kind of min-maxed, I had things built for the other players, but where it was too easy for him. So he was getting through combat really easy. So I wanted to challenge him, and he said he wanted a new follower. He wanted his character to have a good pet succubus, and his character was a cop. Can't remember what god was his father. Yeah.
Wow.
It's warning signs. I was setting up the middle of my campaign for Scion. It was this company named Atlas, Borderlands Atlas, Power of the Gods in Your Hand. It was run by two sons of Greek gods who wanted to free Prometheus. What could go wrong with that? The other agenda was capturing other supernatural beings and studying them for new technology. So my friend Nick, the cop, wanted his succubus follower in Atlas. Wanted the succubus follower, and Atlas had one in prison. It was going great, and he kept his agenda secret and didn't want Atlas to find out why he was really there. I wanted to go into detail that the supernatural creatures who get captured at Atlas normally face a slow and torturous death in the name of science, harvesting giant blood to make a concentrated super soldier serum and so on. Like, okay. I wanted him to get the other players involved without holding his hand and telling him the best course of action. He took the succubus and ran, and Atlas chased and pushed him. Never asked the succubus if she knew a place for him and her to lay low or have the other players help hide him. His character 180'd his alignment, and every time he got stuck and I didn't know what to do, he said his character wanted to kill himself. I didn't want him to be let off so easily, so I talked him into playing it out. He got mad when his high dice rolls were not doing the damage he was used to. Oh, White Wolf. Yeah. I explained to him that he's fighting guys much more powerful than his stats were. The game blew up because, too much outside drama was pouring in, and I wasn't having much fun. Fast forward a bit, and Joss wanted to run Mage as more of a tabletop. So I pretty much built a warrior mage, very combat-y, and a little Swiss Army knife with pretty balanced stats. I think I figured out what my friend Nick was. He's very much a Mary Sue. Nick built a character that was cast in the shadows and countered everyone else's spells. He said he was going for the rogue approach, but when it came to everyone else who built their mage more or less for a tabletop style play, Nick's character didn't fit. I guess by tabletop you mean like teamwork and that kind of thing. That's what it sounds like. All right, so the one point I gave up on the game is when he said he would counter everyone's spell, and since no one would knew it was him, he would do the player's spells too. I was done by this point. I stopped caring and started casting like crazy, never easing in anything with mana paradox to paradox. I was done. It became a mage 5 players. Watch 2 play, and to Josh's credit, he was trying everything to get other players in the game. A week later, that was over. So I guess Nick was countering everyone's spells and being a dick.
I hate dickish players.
Yeah. Next game, my friend Teddy, who runs a game at a comic shop in the city next to us, was visiting this summer. He was running Don't Rest Your Head. Hey.
Yeah.
Good game. Great game. I love it, by the way. Great game. Going great till Nick's character started doing nothing but sitting in one spot, and after many times Teddy tried to get him to go with the group, he just sent an NPC who pretty much dragged him to wherever we all were. Game is still going on. Just started a Pathfinder game. Now third night is coming up. The third night of the game is coming up, I guess. Chris, a friend who's running it, brought some of his old D&D players. They just finished a 2-year D&D game with 13 people. Oh my god!
Wow.
As well as me and Nick and a few other. Nick is. His character is out for revenge, and many times Chris the DM made it his backstory connected to the main story, leaving Nick breadcrumbs and plot every chance he can, and Nick never bites. Chris and I were talking. He was basically venting, yes, his group is much larger than recommended players, but there are 2 DMs. David jumps in when it's too much to juggle and then goes back to playing. So 13 players, 2 DMs, I guess.
Is that a video?
Yeah. David's character is light in that he's an alchemist and is helping, and here's his buff, go have fun, so he's kind of a support character, I guess. Chris was venting that Nick is a prima donna, and he keeps pushing him to make a story about him and why all the players should look up to him. Prima donna Mary Sue. I told him about what happened in Scion and said the best way we can deal with him now is he might get kicked out of the driver's seat when he digs holes for his character with no hand-holding. We were both looking at advice other than rocks fall, everyone dies. I was thinking if Nick digs a hole again and wants his character to kill himself, take the sheet away and run it as an NPC, give him a new one and tell him again. It's pretty bad when, even worse when he argues rolls, I guess, the result of die rolls. Will you have someone like this in an Eclipse Phase game? And if not, what's a nice way to say no? Anyways, thanks for the time going over this, Ben. Lowell didn't realize how long it was going to be till just now. Thank you for your time. Well, Chris, so Nick is a dick.
They rhyme.
Yeah.
It's almost like it was...
Well, I mean, what do you think? Basically, it sounds like he's the kind of person who is, I mean, a premier, if he can't be the center of the game, he doesn't want anyone else to have fun. Or if he either wants to take over or he sulks. It sounds like it to me. So you've known people like that. What would you recommend, Tom? I mean,
well, I always believe in giving chances, no matter what. And I would actually first of all roll out in the open, because I have guys like that often love to fudge rolls.
Yeah.
And just yes, Ross.
All right.
Anyways, but first and do that is make sure all the rolls are fair and the dice come out where they may. And yes, if the bad roll comes up and he starts doing that, just try to explain. I would say first, like, look, that happens. And the good thing about Eclipse Phase, if you're doing that, death is not the end of a character.
Right.
If you mess up a roll and die, which can happen very easily,
yeah,
you can just literally back up from another life.
Right.
So that might take care of a lot of that. Like, and also in that one, wanting to kill himself, well, that's no guarantee.
Well, I think they have given him many chances. I mean, they describe him in like the Scion game, the Mage game, the Pathfinder game, the Don't Rest Your Head game. I think they have to sever, is my side.
Well, first, I would just flat out ask him, like, what are you looking for in this game?
Yeah.
Are you looking to actually contribute? Or are you just here to hang out?
Well, I think he would say, I mean, the thing is, he's very disingenuous as a player. If you're wanting to kill yourself and still showing up, I think he shows up. He really does want to ruin other people's time. He's basically trolling them. I think he would say, "Oh no, I want to have fun." Yeah, no. I think he would lie. I think he would flat out lie about what he wants to do. Like, if you're playing a mage game and you're countering the other player's spells, for the sake of countering.
But if all that's going on, I would say, cut him loose.
Yeah, I think you just have to say, "I'm sorry, Nick. I don't want to play with you anymore. It's not fun playing role-playing games with you. We just have different play styles, and then if he's this kind of person who is just out to get people, I mean, or just out to sabotage games. I mean,
that may be how he has fun.
Yeah, it does sound like his play style is to sabotage the game. Whatever's going on is to just like to be there, and that's what everybody's doing. But he doesn't want to he does want to play the game as everyone else is doing. So he's just an immature person. Like the player is immature. Like Nick is immature. So there's no game solution to that. You just have to kick him out. I mean, I really don't see a solution because he's not wanting. The thing is, you can only meet a person halfway. You can't make them a better player. They have to want to be a better player.
Yeah.
They have to want to contribute. And Nick does not want to contribute. If he would have learned it by the third or fourth game he's been in. Like he would have like paid attention, but he is not going to change. So you just have to kick him out. He's just not going to do it unless he wants to do it, and there's no evidence that he wants to do it.
Yeah, I'd really say it sounds like. I mean, I'm all for giving chances, but after all this time and he's still doing it. Yeah, he's a troll.
I mean, like, he might be totally I mean, there is a slight chance if he's totally unaware of his actions. Like, there are some people that have absolutely no fucking idea what their actions actually do to other people. Like, they're just like, what? Nobody's having fun when I want to kill my character in the game? What? Like, you could tell him if you want to be direct, just tell him when your character doesn't do anything in the game, it makes it less fun for everybody.
Yeah, and especially get the whole group in on that.
Well, I wouldn't get the whole group in.
I would.
But because then that, like, a lot of people are really bad at direct confrontations. Like, they really hate confronting other people. Like, no matter how good of a cause it is. If you have 13 people in a game or whatever, there are going to be people who are just like, would not say anything just because it's easier to not do anything than to say the right thing. You know what I mean?
Well,
make it. It's about you. And don't make it about other people. Make it you. Like, I mean, I'm having a problem with that. I don't want you in the game. I'm not going to run games for you anymore. Period. Like, make it about yourself. Like, don't drag other people into it. It's my solution because you're putting them in a horribly awkward spot. So,
well, I can see your point.
But, I mean, it depends on how well you know these people. If everybody else is like, fuck yeah.
If you talk about it.
Yeah. See, if everybody's committed to doing it, then just kick him out of the group, like that. I mean, really, he's not going to change. So I don't see him changing.
No, that long, that many games.
I mean, unless he's totally unaware of what he's doing and actually is like cares about other people, but there's no evidence that he does that. I mean, like, if you want to be nice, give him a chance. Give him one last game. Tell him, like, you cannot kill yourself. You have to participate. You have to do this. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah, we want you to have fun, but I want everyone else to have fun too.
Yeah, you have to act like the other players. And if he still sabotages it, it's clear he's not going to change. So, kick him out. So that's my solution. I know it's not fun, but there's nothing really else you can do at this point. It sounds like you've given him every chance you can, and he just won't take it. So, anyway. What else to do? So, anyways, this is there's not much else to say. So this has been Ross Payton here with Role Playing Public Radio. This is episode 75.